Good evening and welcome to our third night of our Midweek Mini for the community. My name is Jacob Baccus and I am the Director of Community Engagement here at New Covenant. I'm so happy that you could join us this evening. And this is the culmination of our journey into the community. Or is it? We first discussed why we are for the community. And we realize that our why is both personal and universal. Our heart of compassion awakens us to see others through spiritual eyes. Once awake, our hearts are stirred toward action. Living out last week's question, how we are for the community. When we act in the world, we are not simply doing, but we are more accurately being. This being is made manifest through deep personal relationships. These relationships then allow all involved in them to find the power to live authentic lives built on honesty and trust. This leads us to our third and final question for this series. And like any good series finale, our time together might leave you wanting more. At least that's the hope. But before that can happen, you probably want something to invest in right now, in this moment. Or you may be wondering what our topic is this evening. Tonight we are focusing on the question where we are for the community. For all intents and purposes, where is tangible, often physical. Where do you want to meet? Let's meet at the coffee shop. Or, as the 1991 Artur Diamond Rio says, where do you want to meet? Let's meet in the middle, 'neath that old Georgia pine. In our minds, where is synonymous with location. However, in this question, we have to think of where in terms outside the physical, outside the sittable, outside the meet-upable. You will nonetheless later hear stories of physical locations or even certain tangible, let's say less tangible, wheres made manifest in organizations who will find themselves being the where throughout the city and the county. These physical wheres are important and even perhaps the crux of how you will find yourself being for the community. With that said, let's turn back to the example of Jesus and learn a little bit more about his where. Let's take a look at John 14, starting in verses 2 and 3, and it says this. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, you might be also. Jesus is talking about a house. I know where my house is. I live there, I sleep there, and I even probably watch too much TV there. But God's house. Throughout the years, and in my early childhood experience, this verse was seen as the beginning of the means to an end. The end being heavenly dwelling places, a heavenly house. I think Jesus is talking about something deeper here. Let's remember what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6. Jesus says, pray then in this way, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, on earth as it is in heaven. Earth, as far as I know, is definitely aware. It's here, where we are right now. It's the place we reside. It's the physical, tangible place in which we have met to do life together. So, we see Jesus' plea for a kingdom come to be in this place, this physical, seeable, livable place. But that's not the totality of the prayer. What Jesus asks in this prayer answers our question for today. That being, where are we for the community? But before we explore that further, I want to go back to the idea of what I think we inherently consider, whether conscious or not, what we want to get out of this series. What I think we want to hear is, tell me what to do and the place to do it. To which I say, there are so many wonderful wheres out there. You could serve and be aware at Restore OKC and be involved in their Restore homes, their Restore farms, their Restore schools, or their Restore jobs program. And I could give you all the details you need. You could serve with Hope is Alive and be involved in their mentoring program. You could adopt a house or attend their monthly meeting where you could serve a meal and have relationship. You could serve the community through the Exodus House and be involved in any number of their programs that help formerly incarcerated individuals. You could serve with Circle of Care, Mobile Meals, Neighborhood Services Project, the Halo Project, the Oklahoma Blood Institute, the Dragonfly House, Project 66, the Hope Center, and on and on and on and on. If you want, catch me later. And I'll tell you exactly how you can get involved in those wheres. If, however, you want to get caught up in Jesus' plea, you may find yourself at those places or any number of other places that I don't even know about. But let's finish the lesson before ultimately deciding. In order to get to that place, we have to dive deep into our verses we talked about earlier. Let's sit with Jesus' prayer again. The place this prayer rests is in the culmination of this request. God, bring heaven to earth. Why? Why that request? What is the need for heaven to be on earth? Well, draw whatever starting point you like, but this need is there because there is a separation between the way and our reality. Somewhere along the journey, a schism was introduced into the reality of humans that introduced that separation. This divide left a gap between the place God dwells, presumably heaven, and the place humanity resides, earth, also known as our where. Jesus in John 14 reminds us of this divide and tells us we cannot yet reside in this place. We cannot abide yet in this where. Jesus does say, however, that he will go to prepare a place for us. Or, in the words he uses in Matthew 6, he is preparing to usher in a new kingdom here. With this in mind, Jesus is redefining the where right in front of the eyes of the disciples and others. It seems as if though most of the people at that time don't see that Jesus is redefining the where, though some do. Let's take a look at this in action. In Luke chapter 17, verses 11 to 19, here's what happens. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, Jesus said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back and started praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." One, just one, out of the 10 saw God's kingdom come on earth. Did you? Luke doesn't stop there, however. He continues in the next 2 verses of chapter 17, saying this. Once, on being asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, here's what Jesus said. "The coming of the kingdom of God is not something that can be observed, nor will people say, 'Here it is,' or 'There it is.'" Jesus says this, "Because the kingdom of God is in your midst." Can you see it any more clearly? Through Jesus' life and the continued work of the Spirit of God thereafter, the kingdom is made manifest through renewed relationship. Back in John 14 that we talked about earlier, Jesus very easily could have said something like this. God's house is here. Look around. There's room for every person, no matter what. But you can't see it. I will keep preparing your heart to see that the wealthy are not superior to the impoverished. I will prepare your heart to see that one race is not greater than another. I will prepare your heart to see that one country is not above all others. I will prepare your heart to see that the sick, elderly, and frail are not to be cast aside in favor of the young or healthy. Jesus implores us to use the spiritual eyes we talked about in week 1. With these eyes, we see that the kingdom of God is already here. We are living in the where. This is the where. So when we ask, where can I be for the community? What we begin to realize is that the answer was right in front of us the whole time. Can you see it yet? Jesus reminds us that he has been in preparation so that where I am, you may also be. The kingdom of God is in our midst because Jesus created a space for relationships to be reconciled and for everyone to be known. Thank you so much for joining us for this series on Wednesday night. If you're interested in learning more, get a hold of me, jbaccus at newcov.tv. Or if you want to hear more messages like this, join us in the month of June on Sunday mornings for Faith Promise, where we are going to continue to dive into ways we can be for the community. I hope you enjoyed your time with us this evening. Be sure to check us out Sunday morning all through June. Thank you. I'm pleased to welcome Vicki Gilstrap. How are you, Vicki?
I'm fine, thank you, Jacob. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you. So we're talking a little bit about where we can serve in the community. That's been our conversation this evening. And so I know you have been out in the community doing different kinds of service. Where is it you have found yourself serving out in the community?
Well, for a number of years, I've served with Meals on Wheels, delivering food to shut-ins that I found this to be a very meaningful experience because these people that receive the meals often don't have contact with family or friends very often, and so they are delighted to see a friendly face and have a nice meal delivered to them. And I do that on a monthly basis and have for a number of years.
Well, let me ask you, how did you get involved with Meals on Wheels?
It was just an opportunity. I've been retired for a number of years, and when I decided to become more involved in the community, it was after I had retired from a long career of working, and I'm not a sit-at-home person, so I enjoy being out with other people. I've volunteered. I've been at New Covenant since the summer.
Yes.
But before that, I volunteered on a regular basis on staff at my previous church. So, and I've done a little bit of that here.
I've seen you in the office.
Filled in the reception area when someone was out. So I was glad to do that. But
so when you decided to start serving Meals on Wheels, did you just think, I'm really interested in visiting folks who are shut in? Did you contact them? Walk me through that process of how that kind of got started.
Well, there was a advertisement in the church newsletter that they needed volunteers to drive Meals on Wheels. So I thought, well, that might be an interesting thing. But I learned by doing it that it's something that the people really look forward to, that contact.
And before you did Meals on Wheels, did you know anything about it, or did you kind of just jump right in?
I just heard about it, word of mouth, but I really didn't know anything about it.
Okay. And you just jumped in and you kind of learned on the job.
Right. There's not any big thing to it. I mean, you're picking up the meals from the place that prepares the food, and then you just have a list of people to deliver to. I deliver to 12 different households. And
then you get to spend a little time with them and just kind of visit about life.
Well, during COVID, we've not been going in the house at all. But yes, you visit with them for a few minutes. But it's a fairly quick job that gives you a feeling of satisfaction for having done it, and some good friendships. I've been doing it long enough that I've had several of the people pass away, and it's you feel it.
So you're building relationships with these folks.
Absolutely.
And so you know them on a personal level. So when something like that happens, obviously you're sad. You're affected because you've spent time with them and invested in them.
Right.
And they you. Okay, awesome. So are there any other things you've served in the community? Any other ways or places?
Well, the thing that comes to mind immediately is the first Sunday that I attended New Covenant last summer. Andrew Borch from Hope is Alive spoke in the service, and he was asking for people that might be willing to. They do Sunday night dinners for the residents in Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive is a drug and alcohol recovery program that the people live in housing here. Well, they have them all around the country, but I think there's 4 or 5 homes in Oklahoma City.
Right.
And once a month, they get together for a fellowship dinner. There's a men's program and a women's program.
Okay.
And he was asking for volunteers to help serve a meal.
Right.
And in my mind, I thought, well, if it's a house of men, there's probably 6 or 7 men that would be something that I could do. I like to cook. I like to visit with people. And I've also had the experience of a son-in-law that had an alcohol abuse program or problem.
Right.
And so being able to reach out to men in the community that are experiencing this problem, I know what it does to families.
Right.
And so I thought this would be a good experience. Well, I just came home from church and decided, well, I'm going to call Andrew and see what he wants me to do. And he was delighted that I was offering to do a meal, and I said, well, I'd be glad to do it.
Yeah.
What night is available? And he gave me a date, and he said, and we'll be feeding 45 men.
Nice. All right.
45 men? Well, okay, maybe that's not quite something that I can do by myself.
Right.
So I gathered up some girlfriends, and we put together a meal for them, and it was absolutely overwhelming, the experience. I was expecting, I don't know.
You weren't quite sure going in.
I didn't know what I was going into, and I walked in the door, and it was like I'm seeing my son-in-law 45 times. They were, and my son-in-law was a jolly, good man. I'm a good Christian man that just had an addiction.
Right.
And he needed the help that they were providing to these gentlemen. And I sat through the program. You know, we had the meal. The guys were delighted with home-cooked food.
Yeah.
And we had the meal, and then I listened to their program where they were sharing the experiences they had with one another. They were giving affirming comments to one another about everything good they'd done that week. And
That's awesome.
I mean, it was just a most inspiring evening, and I can't wait to do it again.
So let me just jump back for 1 second.
Okay.
So it sounds like Andrew came to the church, right? And you just called him up and said, hey, I want to be a part of this?
That's exactly what happened.
And he kind of directed you where to go and said, here are some opportunities, and you just jumped right in and then organized some ladies to go with you, it sounds like.
Just grabbed some girlfriends, and all of us felt like it was one of the most meaningful evenings that we'd spent in some time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
And did you feel it was more meaningful, or what was the experience like having known someone who had experienced trouble with alcohol?
Oh, my son-in-law, I'll just say, has succumbed to cancer since then.
Yeah.
And he never got the opportunity for adequate treatment.
Gotcha.
This is a program that is 18 months long, and it's in depth. They live in a house together. They are growing with Christ together. And it's something that I believe most families experience it in some way, either drug or alcohol addiction of some sort. It's just too common. And to witness something that is really a successful program, the people that graduate from the program are coming out and going home and living successful lives.
That's wonderful.
So
where did you go exactly? You mentioned that there were 5 houses in Oklahoma City, and you spoke with Andrew, and he said, okay, you're going to go feed a meal. Did you go to the houses individually?
no, we went to a community center where and we're concerned about, because of COVID,
Right.
Being with that many people, and they were well masked and socially distanced, and came through the line, but we were not up in close up close and personal with any of them.
So they took all the necessary protocols of being socially distant. And
Absolutely,
masks.
absolutely.
That's
It was great.
So you felt safe then?
I
being
did.
Able to do
I
that?
did.
Wonderful. Well, anything else? Any other places you're serving? It sounds like you're very busy.
Well, if something comes up, I try to do it.
Wonderful.
I like people. I like being out in the world, and
is that what keeps you going back to different ministries? Is these relationships with
sure
people?
it is. Sure it is.
Okay. Vicki, thank you so much.
You are
for
welcome.
Being here. We're going to hear from some other folks here this evening as well. But we just want to thank Vicki, and we're so glad you could be here.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. We've been talking about where we can be for the community, and I'm so excited that we have Kathy Sewell with us today. Hi, how are you, Kathy?
I'm good. How are you, Jacob?
Good, doing well. So we've been talking this evening about being for the community and where we can do that. Mm-hmm. And so I know as someone who goes to New Covenant, you have been out and about in the community. Where have you been serving out in the community?
Well, I would say my primary focus for this stage of my life anyway has been the Exodus House.
Okay. And how did you get involved with the Exodus House?
Well, Stan Basler was the director of Criminal Justice and Mercy Ministries, which is the governing group.
Okay.
The Exodus House falls under that. And he came and talked to the missions team and told us what the Exodus House was and everything. Okay, felons and okay. And just kind of dismissed it. And then I just kept getting like a brick in my forehead that I needed to go serve there. And I argued. I said, no, God, you got the wrong person. I'm not the person to work with felons, And he didn't let up. So I finally stepped out there and did it and met the director who I immediately fell in love with and started serving there. And
how long have you been down there serving?
Oh, maybe 8, 9 years-ish.
So quite some time. So you've had an opportunity to develop, it sounds like, a relationship with the director? Is that right?
Yes. She is now a good friend.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we've walked through a lot. She's had a lot in her life, and me as well. And so, yeah, we've done that and met. We sponsored 2 apartments. New Cov does, with Faith Promise money. And so they come for anywhere from 6 months, sometimes a year, the residents do. So a lot of different people have, come and gone over the time. And I'm still in contact with some of those residents today and sharing their successes and joys and heartaches,
Absolutely. So you've had an opportunity then to connect with the folks whose apartment we sponsor.
Yes. Okay. We mentor the residents as well as sponsor the apartment. So we sponsor the apartment by providing, like we stock the cabinet before they move in and provide all the basic necessities of the apartment, and then form a relationship with the residents. And the hope is to have men mentor male residents. That's been a struggle, so we need men to do that, and then females to the females. But to this point, I typically am the one that kind of, not just me, but
But that's kind of your joy and your excitement is getting to build these relationships.
Oh yeah, and to see, they are people just like we are.
Yeah.
And hearing their stories, what led them to prison, and then what's led them out and to the Exodus House, they're just amazing. Yeah.
And do you know, because it sounds like you've kept some of those relationships, do you know what some of the successes of folks who have graduated the program are?
There's a guy now who has his own, I think it's a heat and air business. He now sponsors an apartment.
That's awesome. So his company sponsors
Sponsors one of the Exodus House apartments.
Oh.
So that's just a pretty phenomenal story. There's another guy, he was 20 when he came, the youngest resident they'd ever accepted. His grandparents go to church here.
Oh, really? That's great.
And I don't know exactly what he does now, but he's super successful. And there's one girl in particular who, she's a fairly recent graduate, but she's just driven. She's just driven and determined that she's never going back, you know. And there are several, there's a program through the women's, I think it's just women's, the prisons. It's called Rise. Yes, Rise. And they train girls for cosmetology. Oh, okay. So we've had some come through who are so excited to do cosmetology, you know, and they have a trade. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah. We have a resident now in one apartment. Right now, there's only one resident per apartment because of COVID.
Right.
Usually there are two.
Okay. So two individuals that might not know each other.
Right.
Okay.
They don't unless they've met in prison, which has been the case on a couple of occasions.
Okay.
Yeah. So this guy, he definitely wants the relationship. He's very, very lonely. He's 61, 62. Okay. Been in and out of prison much of his life, but he spent 18 years in this last time. And he wants a relationship. You know, his mom is his best friend, and she lives in California, and she's pretty old. Okay. So
yeah, if he's 68, I guess.
Yeah. So he is loving, you know, being able to talk to me, and he'll talk to Mark, but my husband, Mark, but he doesn't know other people, and because of COVID, he's kind of been locked in his apartment, you know. But he is super psyched to be here and be a part of the program. And I just found out he was playing air guitar one day, and somebody saw that. Somebody that was at the church or at the Exodus house visiting ended up finding out, which I knew he played guitar. He wanted a guitar, and he got one, and he's going to play in the praise band at Redemption, Penn Avenue Redemption, which is where the residents all go to church.
That's great.
So he's getting to, like it's a dream. His grandfather taught him to play. And so things like that are just, you see God working in just incredible ways.
Being able to share those little moments over there with him, I'm sure is...
He loves it,
Yeah. And for you, as well, right?
Oh, the blessings are, I mean, it's like, I need it, you know? I get so much more out of it than I put in it, easily. You know, just to see God working in tiny little ways that make a huge impact, and in big ways that, you know, it's just amazing.
Do you think it would be that way if you just kind of went somewhere and served one time and kind of were done? Or do you think this impact is really affecting you in such a positive way and others because you're able to go back and build the relationship?
I think that, yes. I think if you go once, you know, you have a feel-good time. You know, like we'll have a work day coming up in April.
Okay.
People always say, oh, I love it, and often have good intentions of wanting to become involved, but there's some hesitancy because they're felons. People aren't sure, but there are no, they don't take violent offenders or sex offenders.
Okay.
So
the service day you were talking about, that might be a good opportunity to get invested and kind of check it out.
Yep.
And really see what it's like to serve and get to know folks.
Yep. The residents are always required to be there on our service days.
Okay.
And what we'll do is plant flowers, pretty much, is what we do on that day.
Residents and volunteers together? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, side by side. And the residents are blown away that people would give up a Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning and come do that, you know, to beautify the place where they live. So it's exciting, and you do. There are people that have come and done that and then have continued. We've had some that one girl did it and then ended up mentoring a resident, and,
And so, remind me, was that your entrance into the Exodus House? Did you start with a service day, or did you kind of jump full
I
steam
kind of
ahead?
I met with the director
Okay.
and just asked lots of questions about what it was really all about, and she, showed me the apartments and gave me more detail, and said, "You want to sponsor an apartment?" Oh,
She could see
wow,
your excitement, I
that
guess.
was fast.
Yeah.
So, of course, I had to take that back to the missions team because it wasn't me. I say me. It's New Cov and Faith Promise Money that does that. So, I said, "Yeah, how about we do too?"
Awesome.
So, yeah,
And so you've been doing it ever since, and that's so wonderful.
I can't imagine not doing it.
Right. Thanks again for being here, Kathy. We just really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I was glad to be here. Thank you.
It has been so great to talk about where we can be for the community. And to continue that conversation, we have Sara Thompson with us today, who is a member here of New Covenant. How are you, Sara?
I'm good. I'm excited to be out of my house.
Of course. No, it's so nice, isn't it? With the vaccines kind of rolling in, things are getting a little more comfortable, it feels. It's kind of nice. But we've been talking about where we can be for the community. And I know, and I see you repping, that you have been for the community out and about, even during COVID, right? You've been working at something called Hope is Alive.
Yes.
Could you just tell us a little bit more about your story and a little bit about how you got involved in Hope is Alive and even kind of what Hope is Alive is?
Mm-hmm. Hope is Alive came when we had our last faith promise, and I had not heard of them. I didn't know about the wonderful work that they were doing, and they had some of the residents speaking. I believe Luke.
Okay.
Lance.
I'm not
Lance.
sure. Lance, the director.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Lance.
It's okay.
Lance was there as well, and I was so blown away by their stories, their sense of community, and just how well they were doing in recovery, which sometimes you don't always see.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like they were just doing everything right. And I got to meet some of the residents. I got to meet Andrew, who coordinates a lot of the he does a lot of volunteer coordination. And I just wanted to help. I think in this season of life, I was looking for a way to volunteer, a way to help, a way to be engaged in the community. And it's a little bit more difficult with children at home and, work and that kind of thing. And they needed meals. Mm-hmm. And who better to do that than a Methodist?
Yeah, there you go.
We can do a potluck like nobody's business.
Hey.
And
Throw a casserole in there.
Yeah, we're the casserole queens. And so we got our Sunday school involved, and so we just started bringing meals and got to meet the incredible women in the women's home and just have gone from there. And so we are continuing to bring meals, continuing to serve. I had an opportunity to speak one time, and it was just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we've interviewed a lot of people, but you're in a unique position, and you just mentioned a moment ago, but you're working, you have a family, you have kids, you have a lot going on. How do you find the time? I mean, is it important to you to find the time, or does it feel like an obligation to serve? Tell me a little bit about how you're balancing all this and what the feeling is while it's all going on.
It fit really well with kind of what I was already doing, because I can make a meal.
Yeah.
I can speak, I can show up and encourage. The first time that we went, we took encouraging notes and we put them all over the house, and I can do that. And I was just looking for a way to serve to where I could still continue, the homemaking and the momming and the homeschooling and the working and that kind of thing. And it just fit right in. They didn't ask for me to do everything. They just said, this is where our needs are, and it just kind of fit right in. And like I said, I can make a casserole.
Absolutely.
I can show up, and my daughter, she got to be involved as well, which was really neat. They got to see that. She got to make some encouraging signs and to draw pictures for them, and my son, helps me load, and so I want my kids to see service, and my daughter had a chance to go with me, and she got to meet these incredible women, and they were so encouraging to her, and they just loved on her, and I thought, wow, that's amazing that my daughter can be a part of this too.
Absolutely.
And see it.
Yeah. So you're doing ministry in the community. You're serving as a family.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing that not as any sort of hindrance, but as really an opportunity to grow closer to your children, but also to get them seeing what is out there in the community.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, especially maybe in Edmond, there can be a little bit of a bubble.
Sure.
And I want my kids, and I want myself to get out of that bubble.
Right.
And see where we can serve and what we can do. And
so when you went, you took this casserole, we're saying.
we took a taco bar. And then I got embarrassed. I'm like, should I say bar at a recovery place?
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
I didn't know.
Yeah, taco smorgasbord, maybe.
Buffet.
A buffet. Oh,
Buffet.
okay. I like it. So you took a taco buffet.
I did.
And so where did you go? Where did you take it?
They have a home, and it is this beautiful home that has been decorated so well. Bright rooms, just beautifully decorated. You can tell that so much love and so many resources have been put into this home. And they gave me a tour, and everybody there was so kind and welcoming. And it's just a home in a neighborhood, and it backs up to a lake, and it's just beautiful. And the residents were also welcoming, and they showed me their chore lists, and they showed me their roommates, and they showed me around the house. And so we just dropped off the meal and set it up, and we got to go be a part of their Sunday night, service, where they talk about goals that they've met, and they do this incredible thing that I think we should just be doing as families and as churches, called a shout out, a sister shout out.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Oh, it's so exciting. And in the men's houses, they call it brag on a bro.
Okay.
I haven't been to the men's houses, but they give you a shout out for something awesome that you did that week. And everybody claps, and there's hugs. And I just sat in the back and ugly cried for half an hour because it was so beautiful. And I thought, wouldn't that be amazing if we started doing that in our communities? Like, hey, Jacob, I want to give you a shout out for all the hard work that I see you doing in our community right now. I see that, and I recognize it, and I appreciate that. And that's what they did over and over.
And I think that's such an interesting piece, the sister shout outs and the brag on a bro. I love that because I think sometimes people feel like they're not seen.
Right.
They're going through their life and they're doing life, and they just think, here I am on this lonely island. But what I like about this is they know you see what they're up to and what they're doing, and it gives them that sort of, that joy, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we could all use more of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That kind of reminds me, this whole conversation reminds me of that verse, and I can't remember the exact location of it, but it's something about how Jesus came to bring us life to the full, or something like that.
Absolutely.
And that's what this reminds me of. So I'm just, maybe you can help me think of a way, but how can we translate bringing that fullness of life that Jesus wants us to have? And it sounds like what they're getting of fullness of life, how can we translate that here into our church and like start that here and take it out there?
I think we need to do shout outs. I think it needs to be awkward and embarrassing, but we need to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to show up for our community. I think the reason it works so well is that they show up for each other.
Yeah.
And they brag on each other when they do something awesome, and they hold each other accountable when somebody needs to be held accountable. And one thing that they do that it blew me away, they have, in all of their rooms, they have goals. And there's personal goals, there's health goals, but they have something called a God goal.
Yeah.
And when Christy was giving me the tour, it caught my attention because she had this big thing posted with God goal. I was like, what is a God goal? Do I need to have a God goal?
Maybe.
And it's basically something so big that unless God's in it, it's not going to happen. And I was so challenged by that because in that particular time of life, I had started playing really safe.
Okay.
Because, you know, what if I'm rejected, or what if? And I was like, these sisters are probably in one of the hardest times of their life and doing the work of recovery, and they're brave enough to make God goals. Like, why am I not brave enough to make God goals? So I think as a community, we need those God goals. Yeah. We need the accountability, and we need to encourage each other. I mean, I have not been in an environment that encouraging, I don't know, ever. Just really? The way that they were loving on each other and clapping for each other and, you know, whooping for each other. And I just thought, wow, and they were so honest, Jacob. Like the stuff that they were saying, I was like, I don't know if I would admit that. But they were so honest. And I just think as a church, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Let's tell the truth.
Absolutely.
And let's love on each other when we do awesome things and when we do stupid things.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely. Well, for me, as I was preparing for the teachings that we've just seen before this, one of the things I really learned about being for the community in preparation, like I said, was that relationships are so key. And relationships, I discovered, are a give and take.
Right.
It's not like I'm going to do this for you. You are my project or something like that. I mean, that may be where we start or our understanding of where to start. But then I think if we let God show us, we will quickly be reoriented into understanding that God calls us into relationship with everyone. And what you're talking about sounds like that deep, meaningful relationship that I feel like God wants us to be involved in here inside the building, but also everywhere we go.
That's so good. That's really good.
Is that what, I mean, am I on track there?
You're so on track.
I don't know. I'm thinking. I mean, it just is all coming to my mind that God is calling us to something so big that is already happening. Mm-hmm. And we've heard that throughout this study so far, that what God is doing in the world is going on, and we're invited to be involved in that. And I'm so glad that you accepted that invitation and shared with us today. And speaking of, I think we just talked about this, but in 4 days on April 25th, we're actually going to be at Hope is Alive. You and I and Vicki Gilstrap and a few others will be there as well. So we will have more stories to tell and more excitement to share. So thank you so much, Sarah, for taking your time, and thank you for all that you're doing here at New Covenant and the ways you're allowing God to work in your life in our community as well. Thank you so much.